The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar today entitled Who's Who in Incident Response, the Incident Commander. My name is Tracy, and before we get started, I want to provide you with a few housekeeping tips. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to today's webinar moderator, Iain Armstrong, VP of Sales Engineering for BigPanda. Take it away, Iain.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. Welcome, everyone, to the second episode in our series of Who's Who in IT Incident Response. Today's episode is going to focus on the Incident Commander. And with me today, you could probably go to the next slide, Tracy. With me today is Rob Schnepp from BlackRock 3 Partners and Paul Jacques from Dell Technologies. Rob is a general partner at BlackRock 3, whose emergency response career spans 30 years in international public safety as a special operations fire chief, incident commander, consultant, and published author. Rob commanded numerous large-scale emergencies for the Alameda County Fire Department. He and his company have dramatically improved IT incident response teams around the world based on his background in public safety. Paul is a 20-year IT veteran and currently leads the Stability Operations team at Dell Technologies. Stability Operations at Dell comprises major incident management, change management, sales production readiness, and sits inside the IT operations organization. He's worked there for 10 years and held incident command, Scribe, Liaison Officer, and subject matter roles across thousands of incidents. So Rob, why don't you kick us off and tell us about incident response and the importance of the incident commander?
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Iain, and hello, everyone. And thanks to Paul for joining us. Today, we'll speak about the position of incident commander. And when we start thinking about incident response, the first thing that typically pops up into the minds of responders is how do we lead an incident? How do we manage the chaos that's ensuing from whatever the problem is? And one thing we found in our practice as a BlackRock 3 Partners is that all the companies and our client base that you see on the screen there all have challenges with many facets of incident response. But typically, once we begin to refine the position of incident commander and to begin to understand what that incident commander's job is and all the different facets of bringing order out of the chaos, we really find that incident response becomes much smoother, it becomes much more calm, it becomes much more predictable. So Iain, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And I'd like to start off by setting the tone right. And we, in our experience, 8 years bringing the principles and practices of public safety incident response into the IT space, is that the incident commander really needs to focus on time. And we refer to time as managing the game clock in incident operations. And when a company switches from normal operations to incident operations, we like to say, if incident, then incident management, if incident management, then incident commander. And the first big piece to put in place is that function of command. And I'd like to make clear from the very beginning that command really isn't a person, it's a function, and it's a fungible function, meaning that it can be transferred under certain circumstances from person to person. So when we think about time and the importance of time, when a company has transitioned into the incident operation mode, a lot of things are at risk, and they're all time-based. So reputational risk of the company, the financial impacts that might be present, the loss of trust from customers or key stakeholders. And when you think about time, you can think about 4 main components of that. And the first thing is, as an incident commander, it's really important to establish the correct tone. And an incident response is a professional-based practice with professional people who've been trained and understand that this is an incident that needs to be resolved. And it really becomes we want to look at this with the least amount of drama possible, that we are clinical about the way that we take information in and make decisions. So a commander really has to set the tone right off the bat. Incident commanders also have to make sure that the interactions are happening correctly, meaning, are we having productive discussions? And I will tell you that incident response, whether it's public safety or in the IT space, is not about consensus building and a committee kind of an approach. Disagreements are fine, and differences of opinion actually are encouraged because we think better as a team. And so those interactions must be in place, and people have to be having good, productive, thought-provoking conversations that are clear and crisp. And when you're in the incident response mode, language should change. And what I mean by that is we should start speaking crisply, clear, not using a lot of extraneous language, asking good, directed, pointed questions. And it may seem rude against normal social wiring, but in the incident response mode, we are speaking with economy in order to save time, in order to have good, productive interaction. Commanders must also manage the team. Some companies will have upwards to 100 people on a bridge, and it's really difficult to separate the key players from those that might just be arriving on the bridge to get information, or they're curious, or that sort of thing. So it's really important to make sure that we manage the influx of people that might be participating in the response. And I will say, as an incident commander, really shouldn't let incident response become a self-selecting sort of a activity, that people should be invited. They should be specific people. You should try to get that as pointed as possible so that we can manage the chaos. And the last part there in the acronym of TIME is the engagement. And a key question rather, that an incident commander should always ask is, do we have the right people on the response? Is there anybody else we need? Are we making progress? Is this a novel problem that we need to get different sets of eyes on, or do we need vendors? And I would encourage you as a commander to never hesitate to wake people up in the middle of the night in order to put out the, in quotes, fire that's currently burning in the IT space. It's really important to make sure that each and every person on the response is there for a reason, and they're engaged. And we really want to avoid lazy problem solving, or the viewpoint of, if you can tell me it's in my area, I'll go look at it and maybe give an answer back. And the commander's there to really direct that, to make sure, yes, I have the right people. Yes, they're making forward momentum. And yes, we're making progress. Next slide. So when we think about those things that must happen, set the right tone, having good interactions, managing the incident, keeping people engaged, all against a clock that's ticking, where our challenges lie, majority of the time does not lie in the technical expertise of the responders. Incident response challenges typically revolve around not coalescing as a team, not coming together with unity of purpose and clarity about the mission objective and that sort of thing. So what you see on the slide there are some stumbling blocks, we'll say, to good, solid incident command and incident management. And a thing that a good lesson from public safety is that we really want to try to decouple the outcome from the process. And what I mean by that is, the only thing you can control during the incident is the process you're using to resolve the incident. That's really it. And in many cases, there's a kind of human nature to try and figure out how we can make the outcome better or different, or we want to shelter executives or key stakeholders against bad news. And sometimes it's just what it is. Maybe data is lost, or maybe there's some irreconcilable issue that's just at the end of the response. And so I would encourage incident commanders to just stay focused on the process, run the process forward as good as you possibly can, and the outcome typically is what it is. And the other thing I will say is that it's a common misconception that people in the command function believe that we have to do everything fast. And what I will tell you, that incident response and incident management is not about making fast decisions. It's really about making the best decision you can make in the shortest amount of time possible, given the information you know at the moment. And so we try to make great decisions based on what we know, but we have to be very willing to change course, or to take new inputs, or to change the mission objective, or to change the direction. And so when you start thinking about incident response, I will say just try to avoid owning any of the, and I'll use the word drama of the response, and just stay focused on the process, because that's really the only thing that you have at your disposal, the only thing you really have control over. So I'd like to throw it over to Paul for a moment for this question is, what sorts of challenges have you found in your experience in the IT space as an incident commander when it comes to unwinding the chaos from an incident?
That's a darn good question. So, you know, the chaos is, living inside the chaos is something you have to get used to, right? Your incident commanders, when they're brand new, they're going to panic a little bit. So being able to stop, take a breath, think about what's happening, and then move forward is super important. And, you know, like you were just saying, going fast is not always the best way. Sometimes you need to take that 1 second to save you from making a bad decision that's going to cost you 20 minutes.
Great, thank you. And it's very challenging. And I think another thing I see, this is both in public safety and the fire service specifically, and also in IT, is that incident commanders tend to believe they have to do everything, and that they have to own all things. And if any question is asked, I'm the commander, I must answer it. If there's any kind of problem, I must address it. And there's really a fine line between delegating with purpose and sharing the responsibilities and using the team that you have available. So if there's 50 people on a bridge, don't feel like you're there by yourself. There's a lot of wisdom in that group, even if they may not be necessarily in their particular area of expertise, but good, clear thinkers all working together as a team with a common purpose under good direction can get a lot of stuff done in a hurry. So don't feel that you have to be all things and all positions in every circumstance, because it's too overwhelming. And commanders, really, one of the fundamental things is they just get overwhelmed. I'm trying to communicate, I'm trying to take notes, I'm trying to lead, and we'll talk here in a second about how to parse that out. Next slide. So as a commander, it's really important to understand that there's three big things that are happening during an incident, and those three big things need to be controlled in some fashion. And think about them as swim lanes. And so the three main swim lanes that happen in any incident, whether it's public safety or IT, it doesn't matter, is that the function of command must be instilled and instituted. There must be communications, and there must be problem solving. And again, we typically in our consulting practice find that the technical expertise and technical talent is typically not the stumbling point. It's the other two. And we hear this quite frequently, that we have a bunch of strong personalities in the subject matter expert corps, and they come in and they either overrun the commander, or there maybe isn't command, and it becomes somewhat of a free-for-all in discussions and decision making, and there's really no formal way to decide one course of action over another, and incidents just tend to spin. And so the three things an incident commander must make sure they understand is that we have to command, we've got to communicate, and we've got to manage the problem solving. And communications we'll deal with more specifically in future webinars, but an incident, even expertly run but poorly communicated, may be viewed as not a great incident. And the trick as a commander is to say, I'm responsible for all these, but I don't have to do them myself. And this is the point where I say to myself as a commander, until or unless I can give these jobs away, I must do them myself. And the other two things I want to make sure occur is I need to appoint somebody to communicate with me or help me. And I also need to be able to incident document via the Scribe function, which again is another subject for another webinar. Next slide. So really what I'd like to leave you with as we begin to transition toward the end of the webinar here is the viewpoint of the incident commander. And I'll start by saying this. So we encourage teams that are newly adopting this position to use that term, because we hear incident manager, incident owner, a lot of different terms, but incident commander is very specific. And the incident must be commanded, and it is an incident. So ergo the incident commander. But once people are familiar with that and comfortable with it, and it's well socialized in the organization, that typically becomes referred to in shorthand as IC, the letter I, the letter C. But I would also say we can further clarify our viewpoint in the position with a little play on words by saying the word I and the word C. And I say that because if I'm the person in charge and I'm the IC, if I can see it, meaning if I see the problem statement, I see our direction, I see our mission objective, I understand the discussions. If I can see it, I can help others see it. And that helps communicate accurately and helps communicate quickly. And so the points there you see on the slide are really important, but I'll sum them all up in this way. An incident commander's job is really about a few core principles. Number one is managing disruptions that show up in the form of dogs barking in the background or people that are late to the call or unproductive discussions. All those things represent a disruption, and minimizing disruptions while guiding the team through a transition to get right back into that professional response tone will save a ton of time. And so incidents are plagued with disruptions. I had them in my job as a public safety incident commander. Paul, I know, has those same challenges in the IT space. And if I'm the commander, I really want to take this away. My job is to move us forward, maintain that forward momentum, minimize disruptions, and recover quickly from transitions. And if you can do that, as a commander, you're certainly going to be miles ahead in terms of bringing order out of the chaos. And I'd like to turn it back over to Paul at this point and ask you, from your perspective in the IT space, being an enterprise incident commander, what are 2 or 3 things that are really main lessons you've learned that you'd like to pass along to the listeners in this webinar?
Yeah, so the first lesson I learned was I thought I was paying attention to time before we went through the training, and I wasn't. The change over the last couple of years that we've gone through this journey, I find like my team and myself, we've all been reprogrammed to watch time so closely, because those seconds, those minutes that you lose when you tell when somebody says, hey, I need to go do this action, it's going to take me 10 minutes. And then you're doing 4 or 5 other things because the bridge is busy, and it suddenly becomes 20 or 30 minutes before you check in. Us making sure that 10 minutes, we're asking them 10 minutes and 1 second, has saved us so much time off the top, and it was free. It was free time that was just out there for the taking. It didn't take any tooling, it didn't take any extra people, it didn't take anything but us just paying attention to the clock on our system. That's the biggest and most impactful one that I saw. And I'd say the next one down would definitely be instilling a sense of confidence in our commanders so that they know, and everybody knows across the organization, you show up to one of these bridges, they're the one in charge. Even if you're a manager, if you're a director, if you're a VP, if that incident commander tells you to do something, do it, because their eyes are on getting this done as quickly as possible, and they're here to help.
Okay, great. And so really, as we begin to close this out, is to think of the incident commander position not as the swashbuckling sea captain on the bow of the ship with a sword drawn and yelling and having a heavy hand. It's really about the art and science of coalescing a novel team in many cases. You may not have the same team all the time. They have a global workforce, and you've got subject matter experts coming from other countries and time zones and people you haven't really worked with. And it's really an individual skill in the command function to see that novelty in the workforce along with the novelty of the problem, and try and match up the right workforce to the right problem, and to keep everybody moving forward. And as you think about incident management, it is absolutely a person-to-person team sport. The people are making decisions based on what the machines are telling them. We're having exploratory conversations. We're route finding. And there's so much gold lost in communications that aren't really effective. And somebody may say something offhandedly and the commander doesn't pick that up, and then it just gets lost in the ensuing conversations. And it's really critical for the commander to harness all that energy and to put a pause into the talk and say, whoa, hold on a second, everybody stand by. Now I just heard Paul say something really important, so let's listen to that. And so a commander is part conductor, part coach, part leader, part communicator. There's just so many functions, and you're bouncing back and forth between each one of those on a regular basis that it's challenging because you're looking at the incident through so many different lenses. And so the unity of purpose there is really critical. Back to the play on the IC word, is that I, as a commander, should periodically check in with the team and make sure that the direction we're going is correct. And we do that by way of a thing called the CAN report, which we talked a little bit about in the first webinar, and we'll investigate in subsequent discussions. But it's a report of conditions, actions, and needs. And every 15 minutes or so, if I'm a commander, I'm going to come back into the bridge and say, okay, everybody stand by for a second. This is Rob, incident commander. Be advised our current conditions are, and just lay that out. Here's the actions that we're taking or considering taking, and here are the needs. Here's what I need. I need people, I need time, I need other help on the bridge. And that constant reinforcement of mission objective and direction and clarity is super critical, because if you've got 100 people on a bridge, you got 100 different perceptions on what and opinions on what people think is going on. So Paul, I'll ask one more question to you as well. Do you find the CAN report to be useful in your work in Dell?
Oh, absolutely. We've adapted that CAN format to everything from the way we email incidents to the way we communicate with our executives. It is extremely, it's short, it's effective, it's easy to read on a cell phone. It's good.
Great, and that goes right back to our original premise of managing the clock. And so I'd like to leave you, before I turn it over to Iain, think about that clock as a elapsed timer. And as soon as the incident is declared, however you describe high impact, high priority incidents, whether it's P or SEV or some other term, is once that happens, the clock on the wall doesn't represent time of day anymore. It represents start. And so it's really important as a commander to understand it's not 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're 9 minutes and 20 seconds into the incident. We're an hour and 40 minutes into the incident. We're 4 days into the incident, whatever it happens to be, because that pressure of time helps keep people focused, helps keep people moving forward, and it helps you manage that game clock. And so when you're starting to talk about tasking and giving people direction and saying, hey, I need this task done in a certain amount of time, be really focused and strict about that, because you are managing the clock just like a coach in a major sports team. They're very aware of the time. And you watch the end of any kind of sporting event, and the last 5 or 10 seconds of a close game are always really hotly contested and a lot of stress. And 5 seconds can take 15 minutes to unfold. And so I'd like to leave you with that thought of view the clock as an elapsed timer that shows you how long you've been engaged in incident operations, which, said another way, is how far away have you been from normal operations. And if I've been 4 hours away, that's 4 hours where I've got trust at risk, reputation at risk, some financial penalties, costs per minute, SLAs that weren't met, and now you're in the penalty phase. And so time really, the incident commanders, is the incident commander's friend and the incident commander's greatest challenge. And so I would encourage you to, as you move forward, learning more about the journey or becoming familiar with becoming an incident commander, is that really stay focused on time. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Iain.
With time in mind, I think we actually have a couple of questions, so we've got a few moments to take a stab at some questions that came in from the audience. If the incident commander has responsibilities, Rob, who has accountability in the incident process?
Well, at the end of the day, the short answer is the incident commander is in the buck stops here position. So while I may not have to carry out incident communications, I'm still responsible that it gets done. I may not be the scribe or the incident documenter, but it's my job as a commander to A, see the fact that it needs to be done, and B, figure out a way for it to be done. So if I don't have somebody in that appointed position, I may do some just-in-time training and appoint somebody on an ad hoc basis to document in some way. Some documentation is better than none. And so I bear responsibility, but I may not bear direct involvement in getting it done.
That makes sense. Paul, maybe you could chat a little bit about, does this process really work? I think, you gave us some examples earlier, but, how does it really work? Yeah,
absolutely. So I'll be perfectly honest and candid with you guys. The first time that the BlackRock 3 came to meet us, I was skeptical of the process. And I read the book shortly after we met the first time. But we put the team through the class. We came out, and I am being 100% honest here. That next day, myself and my executive team were getting phone calls about, what did you just do to this team? They are so much more effective. They're so much faster. This is fantastic. And we're 2 years, give or take, down this journey now. And I'm getting, engagements every other week from different teams saying, we love how you guys do this. How can we adapt it to what we're doing? Show us your tips, show us your tricks. And it's been growing legs for 2 years and still going.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, Rob and Paul, thank you very much. We're getting close to the end of the session. Tracy, if you can maybe go to the next slide, we'll do a quick wrap with BigPanda, and then we'll send everyone back on the rest of their day. When I read the book, the one thing there's many things that stood out. There's a couple of things that really, caught my attention was you can never get time back. You can only save time, and that's a key thing that BigPanda is all about. You can't get better MTTR unless you have a good MTTD and a good MTTA. And what we're all about is trying to use automation and machine learning to provide that extra set of technologies and tools for IT operations to solve those problems much more quickly. And you can see a few of our customers here. If you go to the next slide, Tracy, this is how we do it at BigPanda. So we, the very bottom of this slide, you see a list of tools. I'm sure most of these tools are familiar. We have change management tools. We have observability tools, topology tools, plus all of the infrastructure, both modern and legacy and cloud. There's a lot of potential noise from that environment, or from those environments, I should say. And to help with the problem of solving things quicker, getting the appropriate team on the hook faster, reducing your MTTXs, ultimately leading to reduced MTTR. You need a technology that is going to correlate all of that noise, and from that give you a sense of root cause and support automation. Right? That is the key tenets of what BigPanda accomplishes. So we're all about event correlation. Could be monitoring events, could be alerts, could be topology and dependency information from your monitoring tools and your CMDB, other discovery tools that you might have. Gartner say that about 85% of all outages result from a change. And if you're not correlating that, you might be missing some things, or you might miss the root cause. So BigPanda is automating that layer for you. It is supporting your existing tool sets like ticketing tools, notification tools, the chatbot tools, so that you don't have to rip and replace anything, but we're giving you time back in the incident management process. Now, if you go to the next slide, Tracy, please. Just a couple of detailed examples of what our customers have benefited from BigPanda. You see Workday listed there, a 95% reduction in MTTA, which is getting the issue identified initially or detected automatically and then pushed into the appropriate team. 400% reduction in L1 resolution, which actually, if you look at it the other way, it's almost like a 99% reduction of tickets. And again, all of these little slivers of time saving along the way ultimately lead to better MTTRs, when issues do happen. And let's go to the last slide, and I will wrap it up. Hopefully this has been helpful to you this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. Don't forget to take a moment to complete the survey that you'll receive. I thank everyone for attending, plus our panelists, Rob and Paul. Pleasure working with you again, Rob, and good to meet you this time, Paul. Join us for the next webinar in this series, Subject Matter Experts within the Incident Management Lifecycle, scheduled for September. I look forward to seeing everyone then. Have a great summer. Stay safe out there, and thank you for joining today. Take care. Bye-bye.